What's up, guys? Welcome back to another video. Today we went to
West Shore Unitarian Universalist Church.
So, what does the word church actually mean?
The word church comes from the Greek ekklesia, which means assembly, or those called out. It referred to a group of people God called together to follow him. Later, another Greek word, kyriakon, meaning the Lord's house, began to be used for the building where Christians gathered. So at its core, church means the community of people called by God, and by extension, the place where they worship.
I feel like when you think of church, that implies Christianity.
Yes, the word church is used exclusively for Christian communities and places of worship. Other religions have their own distinct terms. So while other faiths have similar gathering places, the word church specifically refers to a Christian assembly or building.
There is no such thing as a non-Christian church.
So yeah, I feel like a church is, and it's called a church. This building is called a church. However, it isn't specifically Christianity.
So we should explain that.
A
a little better.
So you walk in.
And you immediately see.
You see just about every religion you can think of.
All of it. It's all true.
So their whole kind of motto of Unitarian Universalism is truth is bigger than we can know.
We cannot know with certainty if God or Christ exists. They could. Then again, there could be a giant reptilian bird in charge of everything. Can we be certain there isn't? No, so it's pointless to talk about. Now say it with me.
I actually came here to this building before for like a concert that was being held there, and I remember I was kind of confused because this was before I actually knew what the building was. And so you have all these different like religious symbols in there, and I was like, what is this building? What is this used for?
They said God once, but it was the vague idea of God. They didn't say the name Jesus once. They didn't read from the Bible. There wasn't Bibles there. All the songs were super bland.
And when they did like their sermon, instead of having any like reading from a scripture, they just kind of had like a story. It wasn't even like a in-depth story. It was kind of like a story so you could learn a lesson.
In a way, it's kind of like how you don't realize how dark a light bulb is until you replace it. When I walked in, I never really realized how in every other church I've been in, it feels different than just standing in a room with people. This did not. Did you feel that?
Kinda, yeah. Because once you try to be like so broad with the idea of religion, I mean, it's kind of funny because you have like all of these religions go against each other, and then you kind of like try to wrap them all together in one room, which is like, I don't know if that makes sense.
Oh, you remember the Buddhists?
It literally just says Sunday, 9 a.m. Buddhism. So I don't know what that is.
Isn't Buddhism... This is kind of similar to Buddhism in a way, because isn't it kind of like your own spiritual... Like, they don't have like an actual god, right?
Yeah, kind of. I mean,
Or maybe they have a lot of gods.
They have the Buddha.
Nirvana.
The real idea of God is like nirvana and stuff.
So it's kind of like... So yeah, this... That's kind of funny.
They find truth in everything, but part of that truth they look to is literally atheism. And what's true.
So that doesn't... I don't know. That like... How are you... Because then wouldn't an atheist disagree with the Unitarian Universalist Church?
Why they say, well, there's like a God, but like it's like not like a God.
You know, that's just like your opinion, man.
You tie atheism into religion. Is it a religious group or is it a non-religious group?
You know that scene in The Incredibles? Syndrome.
And when everyone's super, no one will be.
When every religion's true, none are true. That's like really what you pick up on. All religion's true, but they can't touch on one, so they literally just talk about nothing.
We also have Unitarian ice cream.
There's nothing here.
Exactly.
But while we were about to walk in, I said, I don't think they're going to like my shirt. My shirt says Jesus on it. His shirt says treat people with kindness. And he said, yeah, they're probably going to like my shirt, but not yours.
When we came in, we were greeted, and they were really nice.
And the first thing said to us is, hey, I like your shirt, to him, and nothing to me.
Gave us the pamphlets, and here's a pamphlet. Everyone there that we talked to was really nice. They were all glad to see us. We sat next to this one old couple. They were really sweet. The lady, she talked to us. She like chatted with us throughout the service and like after a bit, and she was really nice. So good to talk to. Very nice.
Have you noticed that the more progressive a church is that we go to, the more occupied it is by old people? Have you noticed that?
Yeah.
It's true. When we go to the like Coptic and the Eastern Orthodox and the Catholic churches, you see mainly younger people. The more progressive a church is, not only the more occupied by old people, but the older the main audience is. Like the Congregationalist church was progressive, and it had like 60s, 70s. This one is like so progressive to the point where we're not even going to say Jesus is God. We're not even going to say God is this one thing. And it's like mainly 80s and 90s. Occupied by these old people, and mostly only these old people. Once in a couple generations, are these progressive churches going to last?
Yeah, I guess I could see that.
Most of the times when they're doing these progressive things, it's to get young people into church. They're not here, we gotta go to them. And that's like not obviously not the entire mindset, but that's obviously like conclusion you can make from what this is doing. But it's always the opposite that's happening. The more traditional, the less willy-nilly churches have, the more young people.
I think it might be because when you are more traditional, you have set values. But I think like when you get more progressive and you have less like, almost like less guidelines really, young people don't feel a sense of guidance, maybe. Or you have this group that's saying, you know, you can go whatever direction you want, but you're still missing that foundation for that direction. And then also, you have a community that says you don't need to come to the community. Then even if there's young people who do agree with a lot of the stuff that is said in the church, they just don't feel like it's required of them to go.
At the beginning of their service, they have like this goblet and they light it on fire. They have like a flame that they light in the middle. Then at the end of the service, they put it out, which, like, I don't even know. Like, do you know anything about the origin of the goblet?
I think it's just like they light it on fire to represent
the flame of truth or something like that.
You touched on the story. You explain what the story was, and then I'm gonna say something and maybe surprise you, and maybe like, whoa. Or maybe we were both thinking the same thing.
Okay.
So, like, what was the story?
A father and a son, and they're on a road, and come up to this rock. And the son asks his dad, he's like, if I use all my strength, do you think that I could move this rock? And the dad's like, yeah, surely. If you use all your strength, you can move this rock. And so the son tries with all his might, and he can't move the rock. And he's like, Dad, you were wrong. And then the dad's like, no, you didn't use all your strength because you didn't ask me to help you.
He ended it by saying young people need an adult who's unconditionally crazy about them. When he started saying the story, when they started bringing this up, I was like, oh, this is when they're going to get to God. This is when, because God loves you unconditionally and crazily, and he's your strength. All your strength relies on God. I was like, surely. But then what it ended up being about,
overcoming age segregation.
Wouldn't be surprised if this type of thing like exists in every single sermon they say, is like they have something that so clearly points to God, and then they say, actually, us as people together, we fulfill it. Overcoming age segregation, he started talking about it, and it was like, young people need old people, and that's a part of what society needs. And then he kind of just started complaining about his dad.
Well, that's a little.
They bought this sermon topic. That's weird. Maybe the Unitarian Universalists have a collection of stuff that you have to pay for to use.
What do you know about Unitarian Universalists?
Basically what we just saw in there.
Unitarian Universalism actually comes from two separate older Christian movements, Unitarianism and Universalism. Unitarians rejected the Trinity. They believed God is one, not three. They focused on reason, conscience, and Jesus as a moral teacher, not a divine being. Universalists, on the other hand, believed everyone would ultimately be saved, no eternal hell, because God's love was too great for that. Both groups started in 18th and 19th century America, influenced by the Enlightenment and early liberal Christianity. The Unitarians were more urban and intellectual, and the Universalists were more rural and populist. But by the 20th century, both had drifted away from traditional Christianity, and in 1961, they officially merged to form Unitarian Universalism. Today, UU isn't a Christian denomination anymore. It's a pluralistic religion that welcomes atheists, Christians, Buddhists, pagans, anyone seeking truth and meaning.
In a way, that's kind of an oxymoron to be Unitarian Universalist, because saying everything's kind of got its own truth, but the Trinity is wrong.
Oxymoron. My final thoughts. The biggest thing is when you try and combine everything, religions that directly go against each other, you're gonna lose a lot of stuff. There's not a very big emphasis on religion, like broader faith, I guess, and I think that's a really hard thing to use as a foundation for anything. I kind of touched on this earlier with the youth and how they need like something strong. Try to bring atheism and draw that in, you know, it's like what really is the group. I don't know, I just can't fully understand it. I don't know if I would even call it like a religious group, maybe like a spiritual group. That's the biggest thing for me, is I don't really know.
I really think there's something to be said about how the more progressive a church is and the more loose and liberal it is with its theology. I don't mean like politically liberal.
Yeah.
The further progressive a church is, the more old the congregation is. For like a society to last, people need children. People need youth to carry on the torch. Here, the flame's gonna die off.
Next episode, we're gonna go to Rosh Hashanah Messianic Jewish Synagogue. We'll tell you about that when we see you next time. Yeah, thank you so much for watching.